Thank you for listening to Room 9, my daddy's podcast. Hope you enjoy. You can listen to Room 9 on your favorite podcast listening platform. Don't forget to visit our Instagram and Facebook page. Please like it. Room 9. If you better yourself, you better the world.
And I think sometimes, I don't know if you feel this way, Sean, but I think about this a lot. Sometimes we have to go through things in order to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think things that I went through, not even that I'm helping anybody, but it's like, I don't think if I hadn't gone through stuff, I probably wouldn't have the podcast that I have and the platform.
Yeah.
And I would guess the same for you. I would guess that like things you've gone through, you're able to find and you're able to empathize with people and connect with people in a different way had you not gone through all that stuff.
And that is today's guest, Kate Bryan. Kate is the founder and she is the CEO of a company and social platform called One Girl Revolution. And she is awesome. And really, essentially what she does is she empowers more women to be able to share their story. And she's got a podcast. She has an awesome documentary out called The Girl Inside, where she goes into the, I think, Cook County, it would be Chicago area, jail system, and just talks with women. It's an awesome documentary. All her links will be below. Her website, social platforms, and all that jazz will be below. Check it out. She is amazing. I joked around and told her that she's like a female version of me, which is pretty hilarious. So be sure to enjoy this conversation. And I will talk to you guys soon. All right. As always, I love you. Thanks for the support. Stay encouraged. Keep your head up. Learn while the shit is around you and continue on. All right. Peace. Thank you for joining me. This is exciting.
I'm excited about it. So before we start, I actually figured out how, remember I was trying to figure out, I was like, how do I know about Sean? How do I know about the podcast? You were on Tea with Gary Vee.
Yeah. And I had a
podcast
podcast with Gary Vaynerchuk. He came on my podcast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. And then I think it was like another friend of mine also had like shared around the same time, had shared the podcast with me. I was like, that was amazing. So anyways.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Thank you. It's so funny. I've been just battling with, I still feel like, I think I've done like over 115 podcast episodes, and I still feel like, I don't know if I told you last time, like I have this shell that I'm still always like, I'm still not 100% me. And it's just something like this year, I should say, I've been really trying to break out of. I'm like, I don't know what it is. Like if I'm just still playing it safe.
Yeah. I think it's that kind of stuff. I feel the same way. And like my background is in media, and like I've done so many different things throughout the years where you're like a spokesperson for someone or a cause, whatever, different things. But it's so bizarre. It's just a totally different situation to be in, where you're the embodiment of what you're doing with the podcast. And so I think there is like this shell that you have to break through, because I feel the same way. And like, I've done 100 and some episodes, and I'm like, I need to like start, and I've like forced myself to do different things. So like now with the podcast, I'll do like a commentary at the beginning instead of just like a introduction. Cause I'm like, I need to show more of myself in it. And it's so hard when you're doing a podcast, even like yours, it's like, you want other people to have the opportunity to shine, but at the same time, people are listening because they want to hear you too. So it's finding that balance.
I do. Cause I've done a couple of solo episodes, and people I've gotten pretty good feedback on them.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting. But I'm also always like, you got to prepare so much more if you do an episode by yourself.
Right? Because there's
so
no
much
one,
more.
There's no one to rely on.
Like even with you, like because I like keeping this free flowing conversation just like this, honestly. And so I really don't over prepare much. Like I'll obviously do a little background and look in and see, what the person's into and what they're really doing, just so I can have some guidelines. But other than that, I let it go. And it's just, awesome. It's when you do one episode by yourself, you're like, all right, you almost want everything prepared so you can keep talking.
Right? There's a lot of pressure. And then you're like, what if I run out of things to talk about? But
well, that's what's good about editing. So
Right.
But yeah, you are. Speaking of which, doing little research in quotes.
Yeah.
Because like just checking out more of what you've been up to, and
Yeah.
I just listened to your whole episode. It is almost
Yeah.
pretty much just ended at like 11:59.
Oh, wow.
That one you just did by yourself. Speaking of which,
Yeah.
your most recent one. So I got to like that. Obviously, was you sharing a little bit of your story, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
damn, this woman's been through hell, and it's so awesome to see where you're at. So
Yeah,
that's where
it's
I want to
cool.
start. I mean, you can take that wherever
Yeah.
you want, but I just
Totally.
want to say you're an awesome person, inspiring. Just 40 minutes of just checking in and what you're doing is inspiring.
Sean, thank you so much. Like I said before, I'm so excited to be connected with you. And I feel like these sort of like connections happen for a reason. And I already was like, I've already been like scheming, like, okay, how can Sean and I collaborate on different things? And yeah, so we need to, no matter like beyond this, we need to like figure out ways we can collaborate.
Yeah, we definitely will. Yeah, because you're in Detroit, which isn't stupid far.
No.
But I mean, I can't wait till things are kind of back to somewhat normal. But every time I've gone to Chicago, I always go up through Canada and come down through Detroit.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, you got to come to Detroit. It's such a great, I always tell people it's the perfect mix of grit and beauty. You know, it's been through hell and back. It's been through a lot. So it's a great city to be. And it's a great city for like creatives. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's funny. Well, I feel like Buffalo is I think Buffalo is a lot smaller than how many people live in Detroit?
well, now I don't know, maybe like, it's actually pretty desolate. It's big, but I would say like maybe 800,000 people.
Okay,
live
so
there.
they're about the same size. Because Buffalo's
Yeah.
been finally like on the uprise, probably the last 8 years or so. Finally doing stuff. Like we have this beautiful lake. We've never done anything with it. It's all these grain elevators and everything. But so I always feel like the cities are somewhat alike.
Yeah, and that's how Detroit is too. They're starting to like, we just got named the #1 waterfront by USA Today, and it's like everybody's glory days. Like we should have a parade or something because of it, because it's like, oh my gosh, they remembered us, and it's like, no, we have actually done a really beautiful job of like setting up this beautiful waterfront. So
yeah, that's awesome. But anyway, enough about stinking cities. Let's hear about wherever you want to take your story. I know I didn't even know Job syndrome. I don't even want to try to pronounce the actual medical term. I didn't even know that existed until I just heard you talk about it half hour ago. And I was like, what the hell is that? So that's like one of your crazy battles I know you had to go through. And I just want to hear more about your journey, and whichever way you want to take it, go for it.
Sure. Yeah. So when I was younger, when I was born, I had terrible eczema. Even as a baby, you see like my baby pictures, and I had eczema on my face, and they didn't really know what was causing it. My mom was like cutting out like dairy so she wouldn't give me yogurt and different things. And then when I was 4 years old, my youngest sister also was having all kinds of health issues, and University of Michigan couldn't figure out what was going on, and she was really sick as a baby. And they ended up identifying that her and I both had a really rare immune deficiency called Job syndrome. So it's like Job from the Bible. Job suffered greatly. And so
like really rare.
Job syndrome,
it's really rare.
Yeah, really rare. So when we were diagnosed, the two of us in the same family, which was very rare, it was already rare. And then it was like, I don't think that it existed twice in one family at the time. There were only 25 documented cases in the US. So doctors were like, we don't really know. You're going to be hospitalized 6 to 8 times a year, so just get used to it. And my mom, who's an Irish woman, she's like fiery Irish woman. She just wouldn't take that laying down. So she was like, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that my kids are okay. And neither of us have been hospitalized since we were 7, because we just like take care of ourselves, like health wise, and, are really careful about what we're eating, and, we're active people and that kind of stuff. But my story really, I think a big part of my story and what connects to what I'm doing now is, I had this terrible eczema. I'd itch my hair out. My skin was raw. My mom would take me home from school and have to change my clothes a couple of times a day. And kids didn't understand it, right? Like everybody has their like bullying stories, I think, for the most part. Everybody's been through, people make you an outcast because you look different, or you're tall or you're short. It's like none of us can be perfect. And the reality is none of us are perfect. But people are always going to find a reason not to like you or to put you on the outs. And for me, because I had rash, rash, you know, I had eczema that was confusing to some kids, I guess. I wouldn't get invited to birthday parties, and I wouldn't get invited to things like that were going on outside of school. And then in class, I stopped raising my hand. I like went from this fiery little kid that my parents would joke that I was going to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or the dictator of a small nation, because I was like this feisty little kid. And then I went to school and I wouldn't speak. I was like, I wanted to just be invisible. And so I know what it feels like not to have a voice. And I know what it feels like to be silenced. And it was only really recently, probably in the past couple of months, that I finally made that connection to see, hear what I'm doing with One Girl Revolution. I had always had this passion for other people's voices and marginalized people being heard from, and creating this space for people's stories and their voices to be heard. And I think it stems back from my own upbringing.
Yeah, that's already a powerful story right there. That's awesome. I love I heard you say that in your solo episode that your parents said you'd be the leader of a Fortune 500 company or a dictator. It's like, isn't that how every single human being is, in the sense of like our darkness, how you can use it? You can have these gifts and you choose how you use it, right? I'm trying to think of the saying, the feeding the wolves quote you hear in movies all the time or whatever. You have anger and you have good, and whichever wolf you feed is going to win.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, we choose, we have so many choices in our life. Like, you can choose to be ruled by things that have happened to you or things that you've done, or you can choose to rise above them. And I think we make those choices every single day. Like the whole, like, I love Star Wars, where it's like the battle between good and evil, and like, you know, the force and the dark side. And I think we have those. We are always going to have these demons that we have to battle with, and but to choose good and to recognize that we have power and that our voices matter, and that, you know, we're as unique as our fingerprint. If we really believed that, that's something that I've been reflecting on so much. It's like, we really believed that, how we would live our lives so differently. Like, we would choose things so differently if we recognize that every day.
Yeah, it's amazing how difficult sometimes it is to do things we should do that we don't want to do. But I guess that's kind of the paradox as well, though, right? If they were easy to do, it wouldn't really be this accomplishment or this feeling of moving forward, I guess, after. But Kate, when was that, like, shift in your head? Because I remember mine was in jail so vividly, where I just finally was like, you know what? I'm done hating myself. It was like just a switch for me. I just flipped it. And I was like, I'm done. And it just was all, you know, since then, it's been different. Did you have a moment like that, like was a switch, or was it kind of more of a gradual thing for you? Because obviously the way you grew up, that's a lot of childhood trauma you've had to deal with, being an outcast, being ostracized. So when was that moment when you were like, you know what, all these people were fucking wrong?
Yeah, I think there are probably a lot of moments, and I probably am still like having I love suddenly moments. Like, I talk about that a lot, where you kind of have these like epiphanies. And I think there are so many throughout our lives. But I would say, like, when I was younger, there was an epiphany moment. My parents knew that something was wrong. They were really clued into their kids. And so they were like, something's weird. Like, they obviously weren't at school, so they weren't seeing it, but they were like, something had changed. And so my mom, in her 20s, she had been a very insular person and didn't have a lot of courage and didn't have a lot of confidence. And so she got really involved in the Irish American Society in Detroit and started doing like Irish dancing and stuff. And so she thought, and it was a great thinking on her part, she thought, well, if that worked for me in my 20s, maybe that would work for some, you know, this kid who's 7. So my mom put me in Irish dancing, and it was like before Riverdance. Like, so nobody knew what it was. So yeah. So people were like, I mean, I already was like an outcast, and then I hear I'm doing this dance that nobody else knows about, but it became my magic feather. Like, it became my thing that was like cool, because people wanted to see, you know, like, I had this like beautiful Irish dance dress with like embroidery, and all Irish dance dresses tell a story. So they're all like, it's very traditional, you know, it's very much about Irish tradition. So that I would say, like, you know, a year or two after that, where I was like so quiet, I really had this epiphany moment where I was like, I do matter, and I can do cool things, and look at, like, this is unique. And then throughout my life, I definitely have had those moments where you're always going to be your biggest worst enemy. You know, you're always going to be the one that talks yourself out. I'm not good enough. My writing isn't good enough. I'm not good enough to do a podcast. I'm not good enough to do this. So you're always going to be battling that. But for me, I think I've had a lot of different times where I've been like, oh my gosh, I do have something to say. And I do have stories to tell, and writing, I've written a lot throughout my life and through my career. And now I'm using that in a totally different way, which is cool to be able to write other people's stories and write content about, what other people's experiences are. That's been really powerful. So I think it's been a lot of different moments. Yeah, but I think, doing Irish dancing and dancing and like in front of other people and being like, okay, people aren't going to laugh at me. Like, this is cool,
Well, I think that's it, right? I think we need something that puts us in front and that can give us confidence. And I think your mom set you up for that perfectly, which is awesome.
Right. Yeah. It's still cool. And I still do a little Irish dancing from time to time. So
do you really?
That is to be my party trick.
That is amazing. Yeah. My wonderful significant other of 7 years, she's a senior in high school now. She was doing Irish dancing all through elementary school. And
awesome.
So I've gotten to see a little bit of it anyway in my
beautiful.
lifetime. It is. Well, South Buffalo, where I live, is you go into South Buffalo, it says the Irish Heritage District or something.
Oh, cool. So, oh my gosh.
Well,
awesome.
There's lots of Irish people here. I mean, my full name's Sean Michael Cudahy.
Yeah, great Irish name.
Because for me, real quick, I guess, and I'll make it real short because this isn't about me, it's more about you. For me, I was in jail, and I guess I always I knew through my 20s that I think it was more I didn't feel like I deserved it for all the mistakes and all that I've made and everything else. And I think after I had a divorce, I got 2 kids, and I think after that that was like the final straw of hating myself anyway. I was like, I don't deserve any of this. And then finally in jail, after my addiction and everything in jail, I was just like, you know what am I going to do? I'm going to either sit in jail or I can try this other way and see if it works. And I think it was just like, a flip of a switch.
I think sometimes you have to hit rock bottom in order to find yourself. I don't know if you saw it, but I released a short documentary about 4 months ago featuring the voices and stories of incarcerated women from Cook County
jail. Oh yeah,
jail.
I did watch that. What's it, Girl Inside it's called?
It's
right?
called The Girl Inside.
Yeah, that's done really well too. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. But I felt like those were stories that don't often get told. It's like, we all have moments where we're forgotten about. We forget about ourselves, but where we feel like the world forgets us. And I think a lot of times that's where like addiction or even like, competition or all the different like negative things in our lives, I think a lot of times can stem out of that, where we feel forgotten or unseen. And I had this opportunity that I fought for to get into Cook County Jail. And I was like, I want to sit with these women and interview them about their lives and their stories, and not about the crime, not about what they've done to end up there, but like, who are they? Who are they as a person? And it was a part of One Girl Revolution that we did it. And I will always remember, and there's a line in the documentary where one of the women says, I was an empty shell when I got here. She had like literally been on this conveyor belt of darkness where she just didn't feel like she could get out. And I think that's all of us. Like, as she was telling this story, I felt like there have been so many moments in my life where I've felt that, where you're just like, I don't matter. Why am I here? What's my purpose? I don't have one. So then you start doing all kinds of stuff that you really shouldn't be doing, whatever. And she ended up in Cook County, but she said once she got there, it took that darkness, that big moment of darkness where she was an empty shell, ends up at Cook County. And she was like, I found who I was supposed to be. I found the girl inside. And that's how that documentary really
that's awesome.
Embodied it. And I think that's all of us, right? Like, you have to hit rock bottom sometimes. I'm not encouraging everybody who's listening to like hit rock bottom.
But that's a funny word too, right? Everybody's rock bottom looks different, so it's very subjective and you can't really define it. So totally. I mean, it's always that kind of a weird linguistical game, but I mean, it is. I mean, I would say anytime somebody is low enough that makes them say, you know what, I got to try this another way, and they keep trying to do that and doing that. I mean, that's what it's all about. I think getting back up and just keep going.
Yeah.
Which is what I mean, and you were dealt a hand, I mean, from birth, right? And that sucks because that's a tough thing to go through as a child, to be, like only 250 cases. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then one of my brother has autism, and so it's like my parents had we had a lot of stuff growing up, but I think I was raised in a family that like both my parents worked really, really hard for what they have, and they taught us not to be victims. And I think that we every single day we have choices of becoming the victim of something or being the victor, you know, not to be totally kitschy, but like I think about that as like we can rise above anything. And I oftentimes talk about Detroit. I love the city of Detroit, but the idea for what I'm doing now for One Girl Revolution really sparked out of Detroit's motto, which is, we hope for better things, it will rise from the ashes. And I just think that is the embodiment of all of us, truly. Like, Detroit's been through so many difficult things throughout its life and continues to go through some really difficult times. I know right now during COVID, restaurants and small businesses are closing left and right when Detroit finally felt like it got its footing back. And now it's like, okay, now we have to deal with COVID. And there are great things going on in the city. Like I shared with you that Detroit's waterfront is #1 on USA Today's waterfronts across America. So we're like basking in that glory. But yeah, it's just Detroit really is the embodiment of, it's been through so many difficult things, but it's this resilient city. And the people of Detroit are exactly that. They hope for better things. There's always hope no matter what you're going through, and it will rise from the ashes. We're so resilient, and we need to see that power that we have. We need to always have hope and always power through and be the resilient people that we were made to be.
Yeah, it's always, and you kind of talked about Star Wars. It's Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, right?
Yeah.
And you can get lost sometimes. I mean, so much of my life, I didn't work hard for anything because I felt like the world owed me because my brother and sister died when I was 15. So, you know, I had this chip on my shoulder. It's that stage, I guess we all can get stuck in, like, oh, poor me. And it's so easy to do that. But when you're in that, you can't learn anything and you can't grow. And I just, you know, one of the biggest things I've learned to just be able to be peaceful in the shittiest times you go through is just, all right, what can I learn and how can I grow? Because that's the only way to make sense or make this feel okay at the very least.
And I think sometimes, I don't know if you feel this way, Sean, but I think about this a lot. Sometimes we have to go through things in order to help other people. And I think things that I went through, not even that I'm helping anybody, but it's like, I don't think if I hadn't gone through stuff, I probably wouldn't have the podcast that I have and the platform. And I would guess the same for you. I would guess that like things you've gone through, you're able to find and you're able to empathize with people and connect with people in a different way had you not gone through all that stuff.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's funny because I often think like who I would be without my brother and sister dying.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not to say that bad things should happen, right? But like sometimes, because I don't want any of those bad things to happen. You look back on your life and you're like, I wish that didn't happen.
Yeah. I'm not cheering for bad things to happen to me either.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I just think sometimes when I say that, people are like, so you want bad things to happen? I'm like, no, I don't want bad things to happen. But I just believe that sometimes we have to go through tough things in order to help other people. And like our courage or our resilience gives other people courage and resilience too, you know, to stand up and speak up and share our stories. I think that the world needs to hear people's stories more than ever. If we've learned anything over the past year with everything that's going on, there are so many people that haven't been heard and so many stories that haven't been heard. And so that's why I love so much what you're doing is like elevating people and their stories and empowering people, because empowered people empower people too.
Yeah. And I mean, that's exactly, obviously, like you said, that's what you're doing as well. And you're doing it with, One Girl Revolution, which we'll get into a little bit of that, obviously, because we need to talk about that. Because I'm not even fully, I just kind of was going on your website. I know you have the podcast, which I've listened to a few episodes of. I know it sits on about a platform. So give me more details on what One Girl Revolution is.
Yeah. So One Girl Revolution is a social platform. So I use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and a podcast to tell the stories of everyday women and girls that are changing the world through their lives. And it's not to exclude anybody, but I just think that there are so many women and girls that the world hasn't heard from. And it really sparked my background's in PR and media. And I kept coming across all these stories that inspired me on social media. And, you know, a friend would share a story about a little girl. One of the girls that I interviewed is a little girl that makes coloring books for children in hospitals. And I was like, why is the media not covering this story? Like, this is so cute. And she draws coloring book pages and has her mom take her to Kinko's and makes copies and then binds them and drops them off, these coloring books, handmade coloring books and crayons off at hospitals. Why is the media not covering it? then Miss Willa, who's this amazing woman down in Athens, Texas, who feeds kids that otherwise wouldn't be fed. So kids during like Christmas breaks, summer breaks that aren't getting fed at school. She drives around with a food truck. She saves up money, people donate money, and she makes these beautiful homemade meals and drives around and drops them off. So I'm like seeing all these stories, Sean, and I'm like, why is the media not covering these? And I've tried to pitch some of those stories to reporters and people that I know, but it's not, salacious enough, or it's not like whatever.
If it bleeds, it leads. That's my saying, right?
Yeah. And so I was like, well, if nobody's going to cover these stories, like I'm just going to figure it out. And so I had no idea how to do a podcast. I had no idea how to build a website, how to do anything. And just little by little, I started kind of pulling the thread, and then it's continued to evolve. So my vision for it always has been video. So I really wanted to that's where it started. I wanted to do a video series or a couple of different video series, but then I ended up kind of turning it backwards and being like, okay, a podcast is probably easier, even though it's a lot of work still. So I'll run it as a podcast. Mm-hmm. And that's been great because I've been able to connect with so many amazing women and girls across the country and give them the space to tell their stories via the podcast. And then a couple months ago, we released The Girl Inside, so that short documentary, and then we have a second one in production. So this girl, Caitlin Cullen, who runs a restaurant called Tandem in Milwaukee, and she hires people that no one else will hire. So she runs her restaurant as a social enterprise. So she'll hire people coming out of jail and prison. She'll hire pregnant women. She'll hire kids that are marginalized who are being targeted by drug dealers, and she hires them, and she's like, if I can just give them a few bucks and teach them the food industry, I can help them transition out into other restaurants and into actual careers. And so she's created this mammoth of a revolution in Milwaukee. And so that's going to be the next documentary. And then I don't know what the third one is, but we're going to do a third one too.
That's awesome. I was actually just on that website because I heard you talk about it in your one solo episode. And I was like, that's all, because I spent my whole life, I started in a pizzeria and worked up into fine dining before my addiction. It was a little bit before my addiction. I got out of the restaurant business and got into some flooring because I was just sick of being walked all over. I probably shouldn't say this if you're just promoting a restaurant, but I love the idea that, the whole idea of that I should say, because it's like one of the biggest things when I look into like Norway and Sweden, their prison systems, one of the biggest things they're doing, why people are actually still in jail, is teaching them how to cook and all of that, and teaching them trades so they can go out and get jobs. And that is something that's so flipping missing. We're not going to go into it because I can go off on a tangent about the judicial system and people in jail and all that, but so screwed up. So I was like, oh, I got to check that out because I'm gonna try to see if I can get in touch with her too, because I would love to.
I'll connect you with her.
Awesome.
You should totally have her on the podcast. And yeah, I just think that there are so many stories like that. And her story's only been covered like from a local level pretty much.
I know. There's so many stories. Kate, it's crazy.
It's so crazy. But that's why we need more. Yeah, we need more podcasts like what you're doing and what One Girl is doing. Because it's like there are so many stories. And I kept thinking, Sean, I don't know if you felt this way, but I felt like so many times, especially in the beginning, I was like, I'm going to run out of stories. Like I'm getting to the end. And then, which is hysterical because there's like now I'm like the opposite side of the spectrum where I'm like, I wish that I had more time so I could record more episodes. And there's all these different people and I don't even have time to like email all the people that I want to have on the podcast and like talk to all these. And that's it. Is like, there's so many stories. And the reality is like, there are people all around us that are doing these incredible things, but we just have to look out for them too. I bet that there are a lot of restaurants in our own communities that are doing similar things, and so it's like figuring out what those are and like, how can we support them?
Yeah, it's that's the sad thing. There's so many nonprofits too, people I've talked with, and I'm just like, oh, I wish I had the money to just work and help them and create content and share more stories for them, because it's so sad how many incredible companies, how many incredible people who just genuinely want to help, who are helping, I should say, but could do so much more if there was more support around it.
Yeah. And that's, we need to keep talking, Sean, because that's what part of what I want One Girl to evolve into too, is like helping people with the content creation, because like you said, there are so many organizations and people doing amazing things they just don't have the bandwidth, and we get it. Like, it's a lot of work even just to put together a podcast, and I feel like I don't even have the bandwidth to do all the things that I want to do. But you have these organizations or just people that are doing amazing things, and they're like, I don't even have the bandwidth to like sit down and do an Instagram post because I'm out feeding people experiencing homelessness every single day, 18 hours a day. Like, there are people out there like that are amazing. And so I think it's up to us too, to anybody who's listening, if you have a talent, you don't necessarily have to go and like do something. You don't even have to go anywhere. You could do it all from your home, but like reach out to an organization. If you don't want to like go out right now during COVID times and volunteer at a soup kitchen, for instance, reach out to the soup kitchen and say like, hey, can I create content for you? Or like, give me access to your TikTok account and like, let me make TikTok videos for you. Or all those different things matter so much. And we're all creative beings in our own way. And so it's like finding out what you're good at and what you like doing and give of yourself in that way.
Yeah, I think that's super important. People got to be able to find them. And I guess the more people like you and what I'm trying to at least do, and that there's more of that going on, that we can get the word out there. I think content creation, I think people are scared of it. I think it's tough for people, like we were just talking. It's tough to be authentic. I don't care how you can say it how many effing times you want, but it's tough to really be it. And people see through it too a lot. One person could do some content management for a company pretty well. And it's sometimes I pull my hair out that these even bigger behavioral health companies in Western New York here aren't using it. Like, you could pay one person salary to go around and share the people who've used your services, their stories, or the counselor's story. Like, why isn't this not happening? It's just,
you and I are the same. We actually, you and I are like the same in that. I was just complaining to somebody the other day about something similar. I was like, this is so clear. Like, why is this person not doing it? It was a PR, because I still work in PR. And like, it was that I was like, this is so easy. Write down all these stories. But yeah, I just think that it takes somebody to see things through a lens like that. And you and I probably, like, we already see things through that lens, but I've learned so much through the podcast and through this platform on how to see things through that lens too. So it's like every single week I'm like, okay, these are all the stories that I want to tell, or this is the content that I want to put out there, because we've like trained ourselves and we've hustled and worked really hard. And shout out to Gary Vee, because we've learned so much from him. Like, you just got to keep hustling and like keep putting content out there, content. And so, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I vary somewhat in between Gary's point of view, but that's another podcast too. And
I probably do too, to be honest.
Yeah. But I mean, he's awesome stuff. I've enjoyed, I believe he's an authentic, good dude. I mean, I really do from my interaction with him, doing a podcast and kind of seeing, I mean, yes, we all do put on personas one way, shape, or form when around people. It's impossible not to, but I think he really means well. And I think he puts a positive energy out there, which everybody learns differently. Everybody's attracted to different stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah. And he empowers other people and elevates people, which I appreciate. I think that's really, we all need to do more of that,
Yeah, I think that's becoming a thing too with a lot of companies. I think that's what branding it really is becoming. Like, all right, this is who we really are. I find we'd like to fall in the middle, just as we do as individuals. We always kind of want to just be on steady ground, some more than others, obviously, depending on your personality. But I think we kind of want to be liked by everybody. And sometimes it's like, if you want to be loved by somebody, you got to be hated by others.
Yeah. And that's the problem. Like that, and that's our humanity doesn't want that. Like we want to be liked. But you're so right. The reality is the second that you step out, even the second you have an Instagram, right? Like, there are always going to be people that are like not going to like your stuff, or even friends. I think sometimes like those are the hardest pills to swallow, where it's like a friend that you think should be supportive of you isn't.
Yeah. I mean, it really happens in addiction too. I'll tell you, there's some people who will dip out quick. Not that I've always had very few amount of friends, more quality than quantity, but that's a whole nother podcast. We're gonna have to keep doing podcasts, Kate. I think we got a lot we can chat about. And then Good Morning America. We got to talk about that before we get out of here. When are you
I'm
on
so excited.
GMA?
Oh my gosh. It's so cool. So Good Morning America is doing an entire segment on One Girl Revolution. And it's so crazy. I didn't tell you this, but when Gary Vee was on, not to keep bringing up Gary Vee, but when he was on GMA back in September, it was right before The Girl Inside came out, and I got the text message from Gary Vee's team, and they were like, hey, do you want to sit on? Like, you might have a chance to ask a question on GMA. So I'm like on there, Sean. I have like my One Girl Revolution shirt on. Everything's perfect. And then they didn't even ask me any question. I like sat on there for a couple of hours, and it was fine. It was like a fun experience.
Yeah.
But I was like, that is the dream. I was like sitting there and I was like, this is the dream. Like, this is what I need. I just need
so
one
funny
opportunity. And randomly a year ago, I'd emailed a producer from GMA. I saw her email. This is so crazy. I saw this email on Good Morning America's Facebook page. So this is PR 101 for everybody who's listening. I saw this Gmail email, and it was a producer from GMA, and they were looking for some random story. It was like dating disasters from West Virginia or something. I'm obviously not from West Virginia, so I didn't like fit into what they were looking for, but I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to email her. Emailed her and I said, hey, I don't fit into what you're looking for, but here are some stories. Cause I thought at that moment, I was like, I've interviewed all these women. I have all these great stories on the platform, on the website. Worst case scenario, they pick one of these stories and they highlight these amazing women. Then I want like that. I'm still winning because this stemmed out of the fact that these women and their voices weren't being heard. So that would be a win for me. So I emailed the producer and said, hey, like, if you're ever looking for a positive story, here are all these positive stories. This is what One Girl Revolution is. This is what we're working on. And she wrote back to my surprise. And she was like, oh, thanks so much. It doesn't really fit in what we're looking for, but thanks so much. Little did I know, Sean, that she had been watching for the entire year and paid attention to everything. So in those moments where you feel like, we all feel these moments where you're like, why am I doing this? This is so much work. I can't I was like hustling, trying to get podcast episodes out. COVID, obviously, like I lost a lot of PR work. So it was like the struggle was real. And then, I'm like hustling, trying to get everything done. And there were moments where I was like, maybe I should just give up. And I didn't. I just kept like pushing forward. And then all of a sudden, at the beginning of January, I get this cold call at 9:30 at night from New York. And I was like, who is this calling me? And it was the producer. And she was like, hey, we're interested in doing a segment on One Girl Revolution. We've been following what you're doing. My head exploded. And
That's
then
awesome.
She was like, why should we do it? So I had to pitch her. I was like, this is why you should do it. These are all these stories. Let me tell you a couple of the women that I've interviewed recently. She had seen.
She asked you, why should we do it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah.
So I had to like pitch her. And a lot of times you get those opportunities. You have 10 seconds to tell someone why they should be on your podcast or why they should support what you're doing. And so I pitched her. I just was like, here are all these stories. It's really positive. Everything is really divisive right now in our world. Everything political was going on with the changing administrations. And no matter where you fell on the political spectrum or anything, I think all of us were just at a breaking point where it was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do on a daily basis. And then on top of that, you have a global pandemic that we're all like getting through. So I shared with her like why I thought they should cover it. And she was like, okay, well, think about it. And the next day I got the call from the producer and they were like, we're doing it. This is everything we need. We need pictures. We need, all these different, pick out a bunch of stories that inspired you. Tell us why. We'll do the interview. So like within a 3-day span, I did like the interview. They interviewed one of the women that I've had on the podcast about like the platform and why it means something to her. And so everything's just been packaged and ready to go. So the segment's already ready and it was supposed to air a week ago, but now it's supposed to air in a couple of days. So it's supposed to air on Wednesday.
Oh, I'm going to have to keep an eye out.
Hopefully by the time the podcast is up, we'll have the link to the clip and then.
Oh, that would be perfect. Yeah. Yeah, that'll be great. Or we can just communicate and plan it together too, if you wanted.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So that'll work. But that is awesome. How long is the segment? Did you know roughly?
I think it's only a couple of minutes, but that's fine.
Oh, that's long. That's long for Good Morning America. No, it is. Yeah. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just testament that like dreams, in my wildest dreams, I don't think that would have happened. Like it was my wildest dream to like be sitting on GMA, a couple of months ago when Gary Vee was on and just like I might get a chance to answer a question or ask a question, but then like here is an entire segment that like talks about the platform and talks about women and their voices. And it's such a win for all of the women. I had to call and get permission from each of the women that they're going to include in the segment. And just to hear like the joy and validation from them, because they haven't been heard, you know, and like many of them, this was the first interview that they ever did, and somebody paid attention and somebody just saw their story, and I saw them all different kinds of ways, how I stumbled upon these stories, and now
it just happens, right?
Yeah. And so I just think if you have a dream, like fight for it and work hard for it, but also be open to wherever it's evolving to, because I think there are so many things that have happened in my life and also like in the One Girl Revolution realm that I never could have planned for or never fathomed.
Yeah, I've had to really learn, I should say I'm getting better at learning to just sit there for the ride and really not that you don't work your ass off, but you go with it. And when one opportunity doesn't happen that you were excited about, it's like, all right, that's cool. That means there's something else. It wasn't supposed to, right? I'm not supposed to be there. It wasn't the right fit. And I always kind of try to keep that mindset, because since I've started Room 9, it's been the same thing where a door closes and I'm patient. It's like, all right, what can I learn from it? And then another door opens, or I get another email a few minutes later or something like that. There's always something. And it's just kind of, all right, I'm just here for the ride. It's just a ride.
Yeah. We try and control too much, right? Like everything has to be perfectly curated. Our Instagrams, our social media, like we have to say everything perfectly. And the reality is life is not that way. Life is an adventure and it's messy and it's beautiful and it's like all the different things, but we just need to be open and do the work on ourselves and like be open to, whatever this life is trying to teach us.
Amen. That is awesome, Kate. How do people get a hold of you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so all kinds of ways. The website is onegirlrevolution.com. So the number one girlrevolution.com. All our social media links are there. You can email us through the website. Everything that you need is there. The Girl Inside is on, the documentary is on there, podcast episodes. And then we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. So the number One Girl REVO. And then on YouTube at One Girl Revolution.
Awesome. Yeah, obviously I'll put all that stuff in the links, but
awesome.
Again, you are an incredible human being, and thank you so much for chatting with me.
Sean, thank you so much, and right back at you. You're incredible. This has been awesome.
I know. I'm excited to talk more and do some more work, and especially when things get back to normal in this country, whatever that means.
I know, right?
I'm excited to do something. Yeah, I would love to. We'll plan. So I don't know. We're going to stay in touch.
Yeah, we are for sure. Yeah, I have so many ideas. So.
Because awesome. I feel like you're the female version of me in Detroit.
Right. I didn't want to like go into it too much on the episode, but I have a big idea for a collaborative in Detroit that I want to start. And I would love to keep in touch with you, because I think there might be some cool, I'm sure you would have ideas for it, but also I think there could be some really cool collaboration. But ultimately there's a space in Corktown. So I live in the Irish part of Detroit. Okay. And it's right where like Ford just bought the old train station. There's a historic train station that's there. And so they're putting in like tons of offices. So it's about, that part of the city is about to flip. Right now it's like, it looks like wasteland, but it's about to flip and become like a very much a part of like the center of Detroit. But there's a space that I want, and it's set up like almost like a WeWork, but it's really gritty. It's like an old garage that they reformed into like, it has different co-working spaces. So I was like, I want to set up like a podcast studio there, and then a video studio, and then all these different things. And then outdoors, there's a whole like area where you could set up like tables and stuff and do like community events. So you could do awesome. Like book launches, you could do like happy hours and get like different food trucks to come, and then like a percentage of that would go to support different like organizations and their causes. But the way that I want it to be a collaborative for creatives is that creatives could use the space, like they can pay to use it, but I would actually do a barter system with them. So like say a photographer would do headshots. Cause like how many people like have podcasts or are on, I mean, you deal with that all the time where it's like, I deal with people that are like, I don't have a photo of myself. Can you crop out my dog in this photo and use that or something like that? Yep. So like even to have like where photographers could do headshots, like like last Friday, you do headshots there, or people could use for like videographers could use the space, but they would barter like, oh, they'll do a free piece of content for Najah Bazi, who runs the Man International, like the organization in Detroit.
And you would just link the creative people up with other nonprofits or organizations. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I was like vision for it. So as you were, the more you and I have talked, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to rope Sean into that because I feel like that could be really cool.
Oh, that's super awesome. I was literally, it's just so weird. I've been thinking a lot about like going to the CEOs of the behavioral health companies and being like, why don't you all join in and pay me a salary and you can all use a place. We can have a place where we can create content for you nonstop.
You should think about like a creative space like that. And then I was like thinking, because of like what One Girl is, I'm like, oh, I would want to do like a community meal where I'd partner with like restaurants, once a month, ideally once a week, but like once a month where like anybody, no questions asked, could show up and get a hot meal, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, you should totally do that creative. You should totally do that.
I know. Well, yeah, again, it's just so frustrating. Like, why aren't people just creating, like, even if it's crappy, like, they're not even doing crappy content.
Right.
Like,
just
oh, my
create.
Lord. It's
just do something. Yeah. But I think people, we're our own, we keep ourselves from doing good things. Like, I don't make TikTok videos because I don't, like, it freaks me out. It, like, I don't know how to use TikTok. So I just don't do it, but like I really should just do it. I should just bite the bullet and figure out how to do it. And
I know.
It's not that hard.
I don't create enough content either. It's like, what, for myself? I'm doing it for myself.
I love doing it for other people, but it's like, oh yeah.
I know, because I did some YouTube videos when I first got a camera a few years ago, and I was, did them and I enjoyed them, and I'm not terrible in front of the camera or nothing. Obviously, doing the podcast makes you better at getting used to that stuff, but I don't enjoy it as much as hearing, telling other people's stories and filming them. So
you got to keep me posted. Whatever you end up doing, keep me posted, and anything that I can do to.
When I find out what I'm doing, I'll be sure to let you know.
I know, that's what I feel like. Every day I'm like, I don't really know what's going on, but I'm figuring it out.
It's a roller coaster, isn't it?
Right?
Oh Lord. So.
But.
Awesome. All
this
right,
was
Kate.
Awesome.
Yes, I'm going to stay in touch, and I'm going to keep an eye out for your GMA stuff. I'm assuming you'll post something about it, right?
Yeah, I'll post it. Yeah, I've been not posting because it was supposed to run and then it didn't at the last minute. So, but I'm probably going to post about it today or tomorrow, and then of course once it runs, I'll get the link and I'll send it to you. So
awesome,
yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, you're
Sean,
awesome.
Thank you so much.
Not
I'll
a problem.
talk to you soon. All right. Have a great day.